I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at housefarms.com.
I don't care for you or for the putrid sludge you're troweling out.
Damn pus-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give up.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Hal Sparks. With me is my dear friend Johnny Million, who's with me every Saturday, and increasingly so our buddy Philip Ittner, who's live in Kiev right now in Ukraine. And we have a lot to talk about, but I want to remind everybody, patreon.com/Hal Sparks. That's the way you support the show, the easiest and the most direct way. You can always Venmo and support us that way. And then, of course, super chats and subscriptions on YouTube and Twitch, respectively, is the way we stay in business and in existence. And without you, we can't do it. So thank you to everybody who does, and thanks in advance to anybody who will. There you go. All right, now. See, I'm starting to learn to do my business. Now, hi, Philip. How are you, first of all?
Hey, good. Good. Mostly. Yeah. Good week. I mean, we're getting tanks. Yay.
Yes, right.
Yay. You're welcome.
Asa, God bless you. Right. We talked about it last time. You and I spoke on Wednesday about how the M1s are more than likely going to be, they're going to end up in Poland. They're going to train on them, and then they'll have them in the future if they need, as kind of almost like the same way you would put in missile defense system after the war is over, because Russia, still is a bad actor on the world stage. That kind of idea. But the good thing is that the Leopards are coming. The Leopards are coming.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And in mass.
Yes.
And not only that, a lot more T-72s as well.
Yes.
Top of the line, modern, the most modern version of the Soviet T-72, which has been upgraded over the years. No, they're getting hundreds of tanks, hundreds and hundreds of tanks.
Meanwhile, did you see the video that apparently, I want to say it's Thailand, that Russia is getting back a bunch of... what? Laos. Yeah, that's what it was. It was Laos. Getting back T-35s. So if the
T-34s,
yeah, T-34s, T-35, it was 2-year series. So
it's the one that won the Second World War.
Yes,
it's the quintessential Soviet tank from the Second World War, with a long sloping rear and a tank, turret right at the front. It's
like what I got.
It's ancient. Hey, wait. Next thing you know, they're going to be dragging out a bunch of those old World War I tanks with just massive tractor around it.
At this point, I'm surprised that they're not. That their communications aren't that like those old boxes you saw in Vietnam, where they're like call it an airstrike, where they like hand crank the battery in the thing before that is nuts. That's like saying our army has better communications because everybody's been outfitted with a Nokia with a Razor flip phone from 1997, which by the way, those things were sweet. But not. I had one. Yeah, I did too. Absolutely, it was very cool. But so that's an amazing step forward. I mentioned at the beginning of the show, just so you know, right before we got on the air, that I saw a detail about something that was going on that I don't necessarily know that because we kind of diverge in what we pay attention to in this sometimes. But you may have seen it as well. Is that there is a Center for Research of Energy and Clean Air. It's one of the people that are tracking fossil fuels, and they started out as they work with the IPCC and all those guys, and their specialty is tracking how much oil and gas is used, where it's shipped, how it's not just the environmental impact of the carbon from the burning of it, but the boats that sink and the oil leaks and the pipeline leaks. They pay attention to all that stuff, and so, by nature of their research, they are constantly keeping track of all the big oil producers in the world, how much they're putting out, how much is getting to market, and how much of it they're what they're selling it for, how much money they're making, whether they're turning a profit, all that kind of stuff. And last week, they did a review of Russia's current oil situation. And their key findings include, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Russia's earnings from fossil fuel exports fell 17% in December to the lowest level since before the invasion. The EU oil ban and price cap are costing Russia an estimated $160 million a day. The fall in shipment volumes and prices for Russian oil has cut the country's export revenues by $180 million a day. Russia managed to claw back $20 million per day by increasing exports of refined oil products, mainly refined gas, because right now the oil ban is in place, but European countries and others can still buy refined products, gasoline and kerosene, anything you derive from it, which, by the way, is very expensive. Because shipping a bunch of oil barrels to somewhere else where they can turn those oil barrels by price into a lot of gas, for example, is way cheaper and efficient and more profitable than refining the gas itself, which takes up a lot more space. And on a ship, think of barrels of gasoline made, I don't know how many, let's say 50 barrels of gasoline for every barrel of oil, or 35, I would say. 35 barrels, of gas from that. That means your ship has to be able to, that much bigger. And if it doesn't get where it's going, you've put more effort into it than you did just getting oil out of the ground, putting it in a barrel and sending it off. You had to refine it. You had to go through the process. You had to add chemicals. You had a lot of service jobs in this. So it's really expensive to export gas. You want to export the actual, it's like the same problem that Europe's having with LNG, that they would rather have it in gaseous form, because when you have to liquefy natural gas and then turn it from a liquid back into a gas to use it, that's another step, and it's expensive and it's difficult deal. Okay, so Russia's I really think that the United States and Europe know this, that it guts Russia's economy to only be able to release gas to the world, because they have to spend more money, employ more people, employ more machinery to refine it before they can send it out. So, and then let's see, the EU is the largest importer of oil from Russia overall, but India is at a close second. Turkey was gaining, but Russia in general, it's the Netherlands and Germany that are the two primary receivers of it still. Netherlands is higher than Germany, but because it's all come down. Germany's just coming down faster in many ways, which is really fascinating. So 100 and what was the final number? $160 million a day in losses from the oil ban and the price cap. And Russia is selling their oil below the price cap to everyone they're selling it to, except China, who's buying it at $73 a barrel, which is effectively them laundering money to Russia to help them pay for the war without paying for the war. There is no way the Russian government recovers their economy at this point.
Nope.
Every day.
Oh, they're screwed.
They're screwed. This would be all the economic news in the world by itself if everything else wasn't going on. And then tanks from Laos that are 60 years old, 70 years old. So I'm just wondering if you think Scott Ritter was right the whole time, or if we owe him an apology.
No, they're done. They're done. They have been done for a long time.
Right.
The sad thing about it is, how many more Ukrainians have to die until they get it through their thick skulls that they've lost this war.
Agreed.
And also, a cornered animal is at his most dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
No, but the writing's on the wall. It's over. It's done. I mean, it really is. It's done. And I can get back to my life.
Yay! I'm very excited for the idea of it. I know it's going to be a bumpy ride the next few months.
So glad.
But
no. The next better part of the year is going to be fucking. Pardon me.
That's all right. He comes on the. We got a momentary dump. We'll come back in just 1 second. Sorry, Chicago.
Oh, mea culpa.
That's
Mea
okay.
culpa.
It happens. You're in a war zone. It happens. That's happened on. By the way, that's happened on broadcast news, and they've let it slide from people who are in
Still,
Ukraine.
I could be more disciplined.
That's right. It's okay.
It's my
you and I chit chat every week.
I was saying before I swore Look, it's over. It's done. The next year is going to be horrific. It is going to be bad because, as I say, an animal when he's cornered is at his most dangerous, and they have called up a lot of men. But all it's going to be is a bunch of dead Russians. It's this entire thing from now on in is tragic in my mind because there's no way they can win. There's absolutely no way that Russia comes out of this the victor in this war. And it's just a matter of, again, how many more people have to die before the inevitable is gotten through the Kremlin's thick skull. And a lot of Russians as well. I mean, you know, they're still screaming about how they'll now the latest thing is, the NATO tanks are too big. They're too heavy. They're going to be ground down in the Ukrainian soil. Well, I mean, these are tanks that were designed to fight this war.
Right.
And that is not to say
in that area of the world.
That's right. But
also,
that is not to say the narrative that it's now directly NATO is at war with Russia. We are giving them every single weapon that they can use to defeat Russia. So we're not exactly just standing by and watching. But if you were watching an abusive husband beat his wife because she threatened to leave and start dating you, would you just stand on the street and watch as she got beaten? Or would maybe you provide her with the weaponry and the means and the help to defend herself from the abusive husband?
Exactly.
That's what it is.
Yep. Let's take a break. We have to take a break. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide, on WCPT Radio. WCPT820.com is the website, and program the channel into your radio already. You know how the buttons work. It's either set and then hit number 1, or it's just press number 1 and hold it. It's if you do that and your dashboard caves in, you have one of the old radios, and I don't know how it works. We'll be back right after this.
You're listening to Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I thought there was going to be like a new one every break. I was so excited.
You want more, Hal? We'll give you more. Hal Sparks' radio program, Mega Worldwide, on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820. Hoo-yah!
Welcome back. Well, we got all the swearing out of our system during the break. I think we feel pretty good about it. And
I'm just a potty mouth.
No, it's okay. At a certain point, let me first of all, there's been multiple studies that say the people who swear are more honest than people who don't. Secondly,
I like it.
Now there's always a caveat that people are not just being brutally honest when they don't swear, so they might couch what they're saying in kinder terms, which is a form of deception. Fine. But also, when you're reacting to something, the stuff that we talk about on the regular, because Philip comes on my show on Wednesdays, and we kind of have a midweek report of what's going on, and a lot of we obviously speak more freely there than we can on the radio because of the very nature of the conflict that is going on. And I have to say, he's there in countries, on the ground in this. He's got a helmet and a flak jacket and has to go to a underground bunker whenever there's or a subway stop whenever there's an alarm of merit, and they've been bombing the crap out of the infrastructure just to attack civilians and wear them down for so long that I gotta say, considering the mass graves, considering the Wagner Group, considering Solovyov's constant there is no world without Russia, so we might as well just nuke the whole place. I'm saying that if this doesn't call for the occasional F-bomb, I don't know what does. So, there I said it, and I feel better for bleeping saying it. Now, let's catch up on some of the stuff, because beyond the fact that the tanks.
We talked about tanks.
Yes, we talked about tanks, and we've got questions already from the chat. I know, so let's jump in, because I will. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So from Berkeley Dowd. Got a question. How will the coming spring melt affect the war? Do you think the Ukrainians have an advantage under their current winter conditions with the frozen ground?
Actually, the ground isn't that frozen. We've had an incredibly mild winter. I think we are likely to see a Russian offensive sooner than later, because they know that once the Leopards and the other main battle tanks are there, that they're done. They're done for. And also, even before the tanks were announced, we knew that they were massing for a potential winter offensive. The Ukrainians, when I was out in Donbass, were clearly setting up for defensive positions. It does look like that's how they're going, that they are going to continue to fight a defensive war during the latter period of winter, and that the Russians are going to just throw waves and waves of conscripts at them. But I don't think that the winter. I don't think the winter has been a decisive factor, except for the fact that folks were planning on it, and when the ground didn't freeze, they had to adjust their battle plans. Mostly the Russians. So, I still think that we are a war of maneuver that is simply paused in anticipation of bad winter conditions that never actually happened, and also to allow the Russians to get their conscripts and for the Ukrainians to get extra equipment. So we are not in a war of attrition. We are just in a war of maneuver that is static, if that answers the question.
Right. We're good. Let's grab another one real quick before we get into the break.
From Ed's 3D Tech, what is the tank count in the Russian army? According to estimates, the existing tanks in the Russian army are 96.6% gone for working tanks.
We hear all sorts of different reports about whose weapons levels are, and in terms of functionality, better than the others. The Russians have definitely taken some very serious blows to their kit, not just tanks or infantry fighting vehicles, but artillery. Their tanks are clearly in pretty bad shape. A lot of tanks were actually surrendered and overtaken throughout the war as Russia has moved forward, overextended themselves, and then when there was the pushback from around the capital, when there was when both Kharkiv and Kherson were taken back by Ukrainian forces, they stumble on these massive weapons depots and they just take them. So actually, I mean, there was the statistic that we had months ago where it was like the Ukrainians have actually seized more armor than they've lost in the war. But, both sides are definitely going through a lot of their equipment. The difference is that the Ukrainians are getting resupplied by weapons that are even far better than what anybody in this theater of operations had at the beginning of the war. I mean, even the T-90 it is a comparable weapon system to the Challenger, the Leclerc, and the Leopard. The Abrams beats pretty much everybody, but even that, their T-90s were in disrepair. I've heard, American, in particular, generals talking about, the modernized T-72 and the T-90 are a match for any main battle tanks, and let's all not get too excited. To which I respectfully reply, yes, but those are when the T-72 and the T-90s are in perfect running condition, and because of the kleptocracy that exists in Russia, they weren't. So the pendulum has swung. The fulcrum of power on the seesaw that is Russia and Ukraine has definitively switched, and Ukraine is going to win this war with possible caveats and how much damage will be inflicted. That's a variable. Does Russia do something crazy? That's a variable. But I don't have I've been saying all along since the tank announcement came, I don't have a crystal ball, but I know how to do math, and it's done. This will be the final war that I will ever cover in a country that I love dearly, will end with a righteous victory on the side that should win, and that's the Ukrainians.
Cool. Let's see. We got 2 minutes left. Somebody was asking. Petropavl won the Czech presidency. Who's a
former?
Yeah, he's a former military guy. General.
He's former NATO.
Yeah.
He had a special office in NATO, but yeah. Yep.
Right.
Handsome fellow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so rugged looking dude. He reminds me of the guy who's like, I don't always drink beer, but when I do, it's like that. He's got that kind of
the most interesting man in the world.
Yeah, he looks like that guy's manager. Anyways, I think the fact that he won over the more kind of populist, and we have to take populist with a grain of salt these days, because a lot of times the people seizing what is a populist narrative are doing it for reasons that the populists themselves don't know about. So far left and far right populists tend to it seems to be the sheep's clothing that they're wearing. But anyways, the fact that he is a former NATO guy, that in and of itself, I think it seems to be anyways, part of why he got some support, why he may, Yeah.
Oh, how much time do we have?
We got a minute. So it might be, yeah.
Boy. Okay, quick story. This is part, and it's relevant. It's a personal story, so don't take this as a depiction of something wide. But I love this about the Czechs because it's relevant, because the Czechs are, having been in Warsaw Pact, they know the deal. Yeah. I went to Prague. One of the first times I was in Prague, I was sat at the end of the bar. I had been living in Moscow, and I was frustrated as heck. Mm-hmm. And I said, I was complaining about Moscow, about the conditions, the corruption, the brutality of people, and all of it. And there was a guy at the other end of the bar who was giving me stink eye, giving me stink eye, giving me stink eye. And finally, I had to say, what's the deal? He said, well, if you don't like it so much, then leave. And I said, what do you mean? He said, if you don't like my country, I'm Czech. You're complaining about Czech. If you don't like it, leave. And I said, no. You misunderstand. I just landed on a trip from Moscow. This is my rest and relaxation. I'm getting my mind back. I'm complaining about Moscow. Suddenly, this guy's smile was just a mile wide. He was like, let me buy you a beer. Tell me about how screwed up Russia is.
Right.
The people who lived under Moscow's reign know exactly what it is to live under Moscow's reign. That is why the Poles, the Czechs, the Balts, they're all so strongly trying to fight against Russia, because they know what it's like to live under the thumb of Russia.
Right.
And so do the Ukrainians. Fundamentally, that's what it's all about.
Right. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. By the way, my girlfriend's family is Czech, so I'm very aware. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. I'm gonna have to jump on GarageBand and start sawing something together. This is the Hal Sparks Show. Wow. And a guitar note, and then progressive and all. Yeah, it's going to be good.
Hey, Hal, did you mean something like this?
This is the Hal Sparks Show. Wow. And a guitar note, and then progressive and all. Yeah, it's going to be good.
The Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Welcome back to the show. Keep that support coming. Go to patreon.com/Hal Sparks, become a patron, and you can support. You can do once a year. Just do it in one fell swoop. Or you can do it monthly or whatever, if that's up to you. You can support us via Venmo. You can, which if you use the little thing that's just over my head on the live stream, and you can go to, if you're on YouTube or you're on Twitch, you can use their means to show your support for the show in any way that you can. That's all I'm saying. Okay, welcome back to the show. And Philip's still with us. We got more questions from the chat room. And Johnny Million's been farming them like a maniac. He's wearing his DJ JD outfit this morning. He's got his big headphones on, like he's scratching. That doesn't sound good. With the gun. You have to understand, people on the radio don't know what I'm talking about and can't see it. Yeah, you can't make that noise after I say scratching. It's weird. That's not the.
I've got a question from Nick
great.
Rich.
Okay, thank you. Bail us out.
Does Phil have any idea when promised armor will arrive in the field?
We are hoping by the end of March.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of talk. I mean, look, the T-72s that Poland are sending, they'll be sent straight to the front lines. There's no problem there. But getting trained up and getting the infrastructure ready for the NATO main battle tanks, that's going to take some time. They will, again, a lot of people who are speaking in public on both sides, NATO and Ukraine, they hope to have them out by March. And that's about the right time. Now, the Abrams we won't see in the field probably ever, frankly.
By the way, one of the fascinating things, I've been looking into sort of the Russian oil and gas industry because, quite frankly, there is no other industry. They literally they have seen $180 million a day drop in exports, and 160 of that is oil. 128 of that is oil. The rest of it is gas. There's like nothing else. Like ham radios. I don't know what the other percentage is. It's ridiculous. But in the meantime, the United States, if you recall, the right wing flipping out, has, arranged essentially so that we would not quite normalize, but reopen the idea that Venezuela we lifted some of the sanctions on them being able to ship oil and present it to the world because, lesser of two evils time. Are they a problem? Yeah. But have they threatened the world with nuclear annihilation? No. So on the scale of villains, Venezuela, thanks to Russia, dropped way down on the list. Russia's taken up the top 10 slots all by itself right now. And that increasingly is making it worse because Venezuela is using up all the boats. Now, the last time we talked, you mentioned the vehicles that the Russians are having to use to bring arms and people to the front line, essentially because all of the vast majority, 90 some odd % of their troop transports are gone. So they're just grabbing city buses. And I think you used the term Scooby-Doo buses.
Yeah. You kind of see that on both sides, but on the Russian side of things, they're using buses, they're using tractors, they do rely on rail a lot more, but their entire logistical chain has been massively damaged by this entire thing. They're falling apart on the other side of the line. I have friends that talk to their friends if friends had family in Ekaterinburg, for example, or kind of the farther flung parts of Russia out into Siberia, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. They can hide it as much as they want, but it's getting bad.
Well, one of the things that, as Democrats, we always have a difficulty negotiating with the Republicans on one particular point, which is they don't really care what happens to a certain group of people. Like if there's a marginalized group or a group that is, maligned or under the thumb or aging or poor or any of that stuff, they're kind of the losers of life to a lot of the Republican, especially the libertarian Rand Paul leaning folks. You can't save everybody and you can't make it on without breaking some eggs. So the hell with them. And so Democrats are always negotiating from a position of weakness because we care about what's happened to it. It's the Superman versus Zod and them. He cares about these people. They are his weakness. That's exactly the reference. That's, by the way, why the original, that movie, Superman 2, is a Russian-American allegory. It's the problem with when you care about the people, they've got something against you. So in the essence, I don't know personally if there's a way to negotiate with Russia going forward unless there's some sort of cultural shift once Putin goes, or it's really hard to get a grip on, because you and I have talked about it.
It's going to boil right down to Crimea. I think, in my humble opinion, I think this boils down to Crimea, because Crimea is very much part of Russia's sense of self-identity. There's a lot of look. we don't have the time to go into the entire history of Crimea, but ultimately you could make the argument.
Watch the past shows. We've hinted at enough of it.
The Tatars, if you really want to push back, I mean, they have a claim as well. So, Tatar is a completely different identity from Ukrainian as well, or general Ukrainian. Tatars, have a place.
They're more Turkish, right?
It's really complicated.
A lot of them fled to Turkey. Right.
The important point that I'm trying to make is, I think they're going to take back the Donbass. They're going to take back the embankment on the Azov Sea that includes Mariupol. They're going to close that land bridge. I'm saying what the Ukrainians are capable of once they really get going. But when it comes to Crimea, and I also think I agree with General Ben Hodges. I think that the Ukrainians can take back Crimea. The question is, when you start going for Crimea, you open up a whole other kettle, a whole other thing of worms, and it's going to get nasty. Unfortunately, not that it hasn't been, but this is where things are going to get weird, because Ukraine clearly is going to win this war. It's just, what is done about the question of Crimea? That's the big one. So we'll see what happens. But Russia is not in a good place.
No. Let's see. Yeah, we got a couple more minutes before the break, so let's take another question. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got one from Elmac 1969. I'd like to ask Philip if he thinks the Ukrainians will save the Patriots for the Battle of the Coast.
No, I don't think so. I think the Patriots will be here, which is where they're really needed. It's an interesting idea about the coast. They certainly look, if they get a bunch of Patriots, right after this, that's exactly where I would put the Patriots, is down around Odessa, and up along the coastline there. Absolutely, 100% the second place I would put them. But first and foremost, you have to protect the capital. So I think the Patriots will be coming here. They're not going to get a lot of them. So you have to be discretionary about where you put them. But yeah, I'd put them there second.
Also, again, a lot of this is, for anybody who played Risk, old-fashioned encroachment. You move some, you gain some ground, and you put stuff there, and then you move and this is the essence of where they, the illusion that Russia started this because they were worried about NATO encroachment, because all they did was give every country around them reason to fear their primacy, their encroachment. That it's one of those things like, we only have our nukes for mutual assured destruction. We're never going to use them, but they're there in case you try to. It's been the conversation for a long time. The minute you start talking about first strike capability, and it's why our presidents never openly speak of it, you eliminate mutual assured destruction and you change the entire focal strategy of whoever your opponent is. In this, they've now got to think about it in terms of, you're going to attack first. I don't care what you're saying about this being defensive, you're going to do it on purpose. And Russia, interestingly enough, while they're projecting onto everyone else that this attack is coming, they started the attack and are now basically saying they're going to defend their attack by using nukes. This is it's mostly the performative BS that you see.
What I find interesting in the just cacophony of wild stuff that's been going on since the announcement of the tanks, because they all know that this means the end. The tanks, the capacity that is being given to Ukraine is going to crush Russian land forces. So they know. So now they're going back to the old saber rattling of nukes, and they're saying, you're forcing the world into a nuclear exchange.
Right.
Your tankies, your Sovolyevs, all the rest of them, Skabayevas, you're forcing the world into a nuclear exchange. What they never say is, well, who's going to push the button first? Because, if there's going to be an exchange of nuclear weapons, I don't see NATO pushing that button first, especially since NATO tanks are going to be the definitive on the ground.
Right, they're already winning.
They're already winning, so why would we push the button? So inherently, what they're saying is, you're forcing us to engage in a nuclear exchange, and yet it robs us. What I love about it is it robs us of agency.
Yeah.
We had to push the button.
Right.
Well, it's typical Russian thinking of, you made us do this sort of thing. No, you made a choice, and now you're doing it.
And as we take our break and come to the last block, by the way, keep those questions coming. People in the chat room, tag Johnny in them. I would venture to say that as much as we thought had changed when the USSR turned into Russia in the early 90s, what's ultimately true is that largely that seems to be a rope-a-dope. And they never really changed. That it was a cultural change of some order of magnitude would be necessary to stop them from behaving like this. And it had nothing to do with communism versus capitalism. That this is a social cultural aspect of Russian governmental society that stuck around. And if they became, socialist Democrats tomorrow, it wouldn't change a thing. They would just they would just reinvigorate National Socialism in their own way. We'll come back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I am happy, you are happy, let us be happy together, whether the weather is cloudy or sunny. I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky, let us get lucky together, whether the weather is cloudy or breezy. I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. 'Cause isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling, let us smile together, whether the weather is cloudy or stormy. I will still be there in the morning, I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning, I hope that you like cereal.
Yay! That is
and who doesn't want a funny honey bunny?
That's right. Garfunkel and Oates did that in studio for us a while back, and it's just lovely to have with there, especially as you recognize that, again, like we talked about in the first hour, that sometimes social media and the news take over your windows on your house. It's like they walk around, they throw TVs and phones up, and instead of seeing the horizon and your friends and your neighbors and your life and your car and all the things that are real in your life, you see this distant, view of the end times that's being served to you in bite-sized morsels all the time. So it's nice to have a constant reminder. I have been, over the last week, by the way, I have been playing around with the AI stuff in the world or whatever, and I showed Johnny and Philip during the break some of the stuff I've been playing around with. For the entire purpose, by the way, of, and I can only show this on the show, so you're just going to have to just suck it up and understand, is that I was trying to find a picture of, or make a picture of, because I'm in Nerd Halen, I'm in this Van Halen cover band, and we do both Hagar and DLR era, and I wanted a picture of, or eventually an actual made one of, a Hey Baby, so that I could hold up a Hey Baby on stage when I sing Hey Baby in this Hagar song. And so I sought out Midjourney, and I had it make pictures, and you can see them online at infotainmentwars.com. These are the first versions that it came up with. Hey Baby. I like the bottom corner one the most. Those are the Hey Babies. And Hey Baby. And so I made that available to people in my creative circle level of my Discord on Patreon. So they can start messing around with it. They have to sign up though. You have to sign up to use Midjourney, but I recommend it. It's a good afternoon. Mark Kramer and I have fallen in love with Chef GPT, which is like Chat GPT but recipes. So you tell it what food you have, and it will make a recipe, and they're actually good. It's a little insane. I I'm just saying I don't need you people anymore. I'm rescinding back into I'm going to be alone with my AIs, and as soon as they make a sex robot, I'm never going to need another human in my life. No, it's they've already made them, and they're very disappointing. Anyways, or so Johnny told me. But the point I'm trying to make is there's a lot. The world is moving forward at a very fast clip. It's a little nuts sometimes, like technologically where it's going. And this is the time when Russia has decided to make an enemy of, apropos of nothing, by the way, for no other reason than just to do it, just grab the parking brake and with China gripping it with them and just yank it while the car's going 150 miles an hour. Like that, they have just said, you know what? All that technological stuff, we've got enough of it. We can just troll you on social media and wreck your social discourse. So we don't need any of that stuff. We're not even going to try. And I honestly
consider the brain drain they're going through right now. Who wants to be in Russia right now? There's no future for you. And if you're a man of a
military age, right?
There's a good chance that you're going to be rounded up. I mean, I've seen a lot of talk about that happening here in Ukraine recently. It is certainly not endemic because most people are actually
want to fight,
ready to go. They want to fight,
or serve somehow, yeah.
But they're rounding up a lot of really smart people, or they're forcing a lot of smart people in Russia to head for the exit. That's been a problem for a long time.
Sure, but, that happens in every country that goes to war. There's always going to be a slice of the people that go, I don't want any part of this.
They even tried making their own Silicon Valley. That was a Dmitry Medvedev thing. He built this enormous complex on the outskirts of Moscow, and everybody was like, no good. No, thank you. We're good. If we get an offer from Google, I am off.
Yeah.
I am out of here.
Right. And
I am in Palo Alto tomorrow.
Yeah, they all bugged out. Like and again, that's so the reason I bring that up is because I saw two conversations, one from a Syrian refugee that was being interviewed about how difficult it was to go to other countries and how I thought he was a particularly bad refugee to interview if you were sympathetic to the refugees coming out of Syria, and maybe that was the point. I think it was on Democracy Now! Because he lived fairly well in the government-controlled areas, but he didn't like the government, but he also didn't side with the rebels, so he just decided to leave, which is like saying, in the American Civil War, I don't like I hate slavery, but not enough to like the North, so I'm going to Canada. It's really odd. It's just an odd person to talk about. But then they were talking about what's the state of Russia after they go, and there's this consensus after the brain drain happens and they've killed off the rest of their functional men largely, that they become a feudal state, that they are going back to a level of societal function that's positively we're talking Wild West 1700s kind of stuff, even worse than post the violence that was post 91. What do you build in Russia except weapons and an oil and gas industry? And then what do you build if that's all you got and nobody wants any of it from you anymore because of how you do everything else, because of what you do with the weapons and what you use the energy for? I don't think anybody's prepared for that, for answering that question.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk in Russia about what is our future? What does the next 20, 30, 50 years look like, sort of thing. I know a lot of people that have left. I know of many. I have personal friends. I have a lovely friend of mine who used to work for the air industry out in Ekaterinburg. And because she is of Jewish descent, she's in Israel right now and is not going back. So, there's sadly, look, I don't take any pleasure in saying this, but there's very little future in Russia once they lose this war, and they're going to lose this war.
Right.
It's the ramifications of what Putin did here are going to just go on and on and on. And if you're in your 20s or your 30s and you're living in Russia, the writing is on the wall, no matter how much you want to pretend it isn't. things are not looking good for them because the sanctions and also just the damage that this war is doing to them is not going to be cleaned up for years.
It seems like a bad tactical maneuver in general because of the illusion that somehow they could occupy Ukraine in the first place, which was never going to happen. Now, with all the other sanctions and the rest, and becoming a pariah and effectively dragging China behind them. By the way, since the Ukraine war, Chinese exports are off by 70%. Now, there's been a lot of elements, COVID and other things in China, but there's also the perception of you can't trust the Chinese government with your goods. And so a lot of people, factories are reshoring, they're getting out, or they're moving someplace else. They're going to Vietnam, or they're going to Cambodia, or they're going to Australia, or anywhere, Japan and South Korea. But part of why people are leaving is not just the government's so inept that they keep having lockdowns and they don't know how that stuff works, and then they effectively wipe. There's there are millions of people dying there right now. It's horrifying on its own. But also their relation to Russia and the fact that they are paying more for oil to Russia than anybody else right now, seemingly on purpose, as a way of slipping Russia a 20 with every barrel to just say, look, this is for you. I can't say we're supporting you. We can't give you this. We can't give you that, but we'll give you the money to buy it. And we've talked to Iran. You could buy it from them. That's essentially what's happening, because there's nowhere else. Both of these countries, we are headed into a year where both of these countries experience a political and social shock like they have not experienced, certainly Russia, since 91, and I would say worse than that. And China since the Cultural Revolution, since Mao's famine, like that we're on the precipice of that. And by the way,
there's going to be a lot of heavy water ahead, and we better grab onto the ropes on the raft, because 23 is going to be a rocky year.
Yes, it is.
But at the end, it will be of benefit, I do believe, because I think we're going to come through the whitewater and into nice calm waters. But we're going to watch both Russia and China. I'll defer to you about China, but certainly we're going to see Russia in a real fit of
a hell of their own making.
Their own making.
Right. That's anyways. Thanks, Philip Ittner, for joining us. Follow Philip Ittner on Twitter, guys. 1L 2Ts. And of course, he's got a vlog you might want to check out as well. Thanks for being a guest. We'll see you on Wednesday. Johnny Million, you're awesome. We love you. You're amazing. Thanks everybody in the chat room. I'll be. I'm going to go check on the kitten who may have just come back from the doctor. Hopefully, okay. Fingers crossed. I'll let you guys know. Yeah. Absolutely. Much love. Thanks, Chicago. You guys are awesome. See you soon.
Thanks, Chicago. Thanks, Johnny. See you guys later.
Hi, everybody.